All right, that's it, guys. We're live. What's going on, everybody? I hope you guys are doing well. Let me turn my camera down a little bit. But for some reason, it's just spiking up in air. It just goes to show how long I haven't used it. What is going on, guys? A lot to talk about today, and we're going to be discussing who, in my opinion, is the greatest footballer of all time, and what we thought about the World Cup as well. But before we get into all of that, let me introduce Dave, our normal Chelsea fan who comes in and gives his thoughts about how the team's been going on. Dave, what have you been up to? And haven't talked to you since before the World Cup started. How you been, mate?
Yeah, no, just been good. Been good. Just having Christmas here, and all of those festive times with the family. So yeah, it's been good, and a lot of football to watch as well. And I'm smiling a little bit more with a Chelsea win, which I've not been accustomed to this year for some reason. So, but a win's a win. So yeah.
Yeah, because it's again, Chelsea have been called a bunch of mercenaries. Someone's just gone out and got a lot of players and just bunched them together, and
Mm.
so there's going to need to be that development time with them. But I know we had your thoughts on this season a couple of months ago. But what really is your expectations for them? Do you think they can get into the top four?
I think top four is a bit of is a doubt now. As we're speaking, by the way, Leicester have scored. So Leicester 1-0 up against Liverpool. Um,
Wow. Okay, Brentford's just scored as well. Ivan Tony has just put Brentford 1-0 up against West Ham.
I thought he was going to be banned. What's going on with Tony? Do we know what the situation is? Sorry to go off track.
No, it's. I mean, basically, they haven't got anything sorted. So I can't believe Leicester's just scored. I mean, they've just cut through Liverpool like nothing. That is
Yeah,
ridiculous. What's going on, 18? I hope you guys are all right. What's happening, Alex? Looking forward to seeing your input later on, Alex. So yeah, I really don't know what the Ivan Tony thing was all about. In terms of why they couldn't get it. Sometimes when people appeal, it knocks things back, and I think that's what's happened to him. I think that
mm,
there's been an appeal that's gone out, and it's just knocked it back. About what's going on, Gary. I hope you're doing okay, Gary. Tonight we're going to talk about Pele. No, and I'll send you the link. And really just giving our thoughts about the World Cup as a whole, though, David. Can you see Chelsea? So, what are you looking at, fifth or sixth?
I I think this is the difficulty where we've had injuries, where we haven't been as good, where we've had bad form. It's just so frustrating for Chelsea fans to kind of look at this year and go, we could make top four. I think there's a couple of things like the resurgence of United. I think that's been pretty big. Obviously, Tottenham are there or thereabouts. So they're always going to be in that search. So I think Chelsea have always been quite good towards like 3/4 of the season, then tend to drop off. This year, we it's almost been the opposite. So we kind of need a strong end to the season. But I can we do it? Yes, because there's no certainties in the Premier League. There's results that happen, like obviously the Tottenham one the other day, and there's any team can upset anyone. But do I think top four is going to happen? I've got major doubts with Chelsea. So it's just not. I think this year, if we're going to look at this year, it's going to have to be a rebuilding job. It's going to have to
Mm,
be right. This try and ingratiate as many players into the starting 11 and into the squad as possible. This January, we've already made a signing of Fafana up front from Mould, who unproven, but we'll see how he goes. Looks like we bought Nkunku, who's going to be joining us next summer. I
good
believe
player.
that's confirmed. I,
Good player.
but then there's also a glaring weakness of Chelsea, which is centre midfield.
Mm, mm.
It is glaring. In my eyes, I watch games and I'm just like, you can buy all the strikers you want. You can go and buy Koulibaly at the back. Reece James just got injured again. Lovely. It just there are so many issues with Chelsea now that you just think to yourself, Jesus, like what, it's gonna need to be a major rebuild for us to even really progress through. But I hope that Potter and his scouting network, bearing in mind what they've done at Brighton, can do a good job. But they have to remember this isn't they're not buying to sell on for another, buying a player for 20 mil to sell for 50 or 60 now. This is Chelsea. Yeah. Players have to perform week in, week out, and if you're going to buy for profit, that's not going to cut it at Chelsea. You have to buy players to stay here for a long, for a lengthy period of time and perform week in, week out and get 7s or 8s out of 10s a week. So yeah, we've given ourselves a lot to do, but do I believe we can do it? Yes, but we have to up our game quite significantly.
Yeah, because I mean, at the moment, you're probably in the same boat as Liverpool. Liverpool are playing tonight; they're losing 1-0. Man United are only a point behind Tottenham with a game in hand. So I actually think that's your top 4. Really, I think it's Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle, and United. Until I can see some consistency from Tottenham are consistent. They're just not playing great football, and they keep going behind, having to claw their way back. So that's consistency. But for Liverpool and for Liverpool and Chelsea, it's something different. It's just making sure, for Chelsea anyway, they can get a first 11 that can go in and start to build some consistency. Right now, it just doesn't seem like Potter has got that team underneath his foot, and stuff like that takes time. As an Arsenal fan, I concede it's taken Arteta a couple of years to do it. So I know you can step in there, change things up a little bit, change the system and everything straight away. But then how long does it take for A, the players to embrace that scheme, or B, for you to get players in that will embrace that scheme? And sometimes it will take a short-term fix, but then what you want is a long-term gain from all of the changes. So welcome to everybody. We're going to talk about the World Cup. We're going to talk about Pele as well. And I think really that we should just sort of really cover off what we thought about the World Cup. Lots and lots and lots of controversy surrounding the World Cup. And it was the gift that kept on giving in terms of what the country stood for. Some people agreed with it, some people didn't. And because of that, a lot of people sort of boycotted it in terms of, all of the gay rights stuff and all the stuff that when you go there, you can't do. And there was a big joke about you can't have a beer and hot dogs and things like that. But all that aside, the football was tremendous. The football was amazing. And to see the leap in Southeast Asian teams, South Korea, Japan, and then the African teams with Morocco. And I thought that it became really, really entertaining. And I absolutely loved the level of football that we saw. What was your thoughts on the World Cup as a whole?
Yeah, I think obvious elephant in the room is everything beforehand. I think my opinion on that is this bid was awarded however many years ago. Really there should have been, in my opinion, more of an uproar then a month or 2 months or 6 months before the tournament was started, when things were getting in place. Obviously that just my 2 cents on that. In terms of the World Cup, it's brilliant. Like, I don't think you can, like, the amount of upsets that the winners of the tournament,
loads. Lost their first game
to Saudi Arabia. People are forgetting that kind of stuff, and you never, even when you're doing your predictors, think to yourself, oh, who's going through? And you look like I was standing at like wall trot in my office thinking, all right, well, this looks pretty good. This looks pretty, you just kind of sussing it out. And then the amount of upsets and the amount of good play that there was, the amount of new stars that were going to be made from the World Cup, it's a joke. It really was good, and I'm so happy that at the end of the tournament, it was all about football, and it was probably the best, one of the greatest games that we're ever going to watch, in the most high intense environment that you're going to have a World Cup final. And the play was fantastic, and the biggest stars, the Mbappés and the Messis, were performing on the biggest stage. It's something that we don't as football fans normally get like a duel. It's normally in American sports where you're like, oh, quarterback versus quarterback, or whether it's Steph Curry versus LeBron, or who's going to outscore who. We rarely get this kind of thing. So I think this is just something where, for once, you have those big stars turning up, and the World Cup as a whole, it was great. Football content was mad, in my opinion. So yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. There's a lot to be said of the cultural issues, and for those, I ever had two ways to look at it. It was like, they're not the acceptance of them with the world was just not there, and some people turned a blind eye to it, but they wanted the world to accept them, so that was the other side of it. And when you looked at it realistically, a lot of Europeans and a lot of Americans and people around the world came away from it understanding that culture a little bit more. So while they wasn't as receptive to the world's culture, and there was a few things they sort of was relaxing on, the main achievement for them was that people was able to understand them a little bit more. So politically, and we don't really want to talk about it politically, but that's kind of what I got out of it. But the football was just tremendous. I completely agree. Tony, what was your thoughts of the World Cup as a whole?
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. My thoughts was it was a fantastic tournament, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch the group stages. I
remember, yeah, I got him on for a show, and we were saying, Tony, actually, what we were doing, we were saying who's your top, your best three players so far, and the worst three players so far. And among the worst players, I had Lewandowski, and I had a couple of other guys in there. And when the best players, and every time I went to Tony, Tony's like, well, I'd love to tell you, but I didn't watch any of the games. What do you think of Gakpo's goals in the group stage? Well, I'd love to tell you, but I didn't. So it was really weird.
I mean, my biggest problem was that I was at school working at the time when the games were happening. I mean, it was, I guess, there were a couple of games where I did get, highlights, but I just wasn't interested. The fact that I was coming home from school, I was tired. I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll just wait till it gets to the quarterfinal stages, and that's when I took an interest.
Well, Andrew joined you. Andrew didn't watch any group games either. Wow. So yeah, and obviously through that, all of the hype would have happened. So you would have heard about the big teams losing, you would have heard about Germany failing, you would have heard about all this stuff, and then you come to the last 16 and you're like, okay, so now we're cooking.
I mean, there's teams like Germany. I didn't see one of their games. I have no idea how they even managed to get eliminated before the tournament really kicked into place, because I didn't watch their games.
My God. So overall, guys, I'm just trying to remember that when the World Cup was going on, we heard the news, and this is what we're here for tonight. We're here to talk about King Pele. When it was going on, we heard that there was issues going on with Pele, where they was moving him out of a hospital, and basically all this treatment and everything that he was getting, they were putting it to a head. So I kind of think that at the time, the world, his fans, the Brazilian football team, all understood what pretty much the next phases were. It was just a situation where it was just the number of days. We were counting down the days to his death. And then Brazil, the team came out in the field and they had that banner and poster of him, and they were sort of playing for Pele. But for those of you, obviously, who wasn't keeping up with what was going on, he died due to the multiple failures of his organs because of the progression of his colon cancer associated with previous clinical conditions. So it was just, it got to the point where they knew they couldn't do anything more for him. And that's the reason why they said, look, let's just make sure he goes home, be's with his family. His last days will be spent with the people that he loves. And it was his daughter that sent the message out. As we are at this point in time, the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, he's declared 3 days of national mourning. So we are going to go well into the weekend with Brazil mourning what, in my opinion, has been the greatest footballer of all time. And I'm going to go through a few things just before we get everybody's opinion in the chat. And a big shout out to everybody. Big shout out to Gary, Alex Cannon Fodder, John Gooner. John Gooner says, "Evening, Gunners. Rest in peace, Pele. Footballer of God, never mind, greatest of all time." Big shout out to Andrew. A big shout out to Boxer Size. Hey guys, Saj. Big shout out to Saj. Big shout out to Ang as well. She says, "Rest in peace. Best player we've ever seen, and really felt for his daughter." Yeah, big time. So realistically, let me talk about what he's done first, and then we'll go around and talk about him as a whole and how we remembered him. And for me, guys, I think that we just need to hear about what he's done and wonder why people say he's the greatest. In 2000, the turn of the century, he was voted as the player of the century. Now, you know, all of those things that said Maradona or Pele, and that went on for 20 years or 15 years. And FIFA themselves gave this guy the Player of the Century award. That's how big he was, Player of the Century. And statistically, he was, I believe it was, I put the figures up as well. It was 1,200 goals in 1,300 games overall. That's everything. That's all games included. Every single game he ever played when he touched. And there's a breakdown of that, obviously. And that's actually in the Guinness Book of Records, by the way, guys. You can check that yourself. 643 goals for Santos in 656 matches. And his career spanned 21 years. Now, I only ever know, was it Tom Brady playing that long? I can't remember who's played that long before. 21 years. I'll have to check that up to see if there's a sportsman that's ever played longer than that in history. I know the Utah Jazz coach Jerry Sloan coached for 20 years. Arsene Wenger coached for 22 years. But as a player, as a physical toll of what it does on your body, that's crazy. And he had 77 goals in 92 games for his country. That I'd like to put that stuff. People was talking about Giroud beat Thierry Henry's record with 51 goals. And everyone was lauding about that. This guy scored 77 goals in 92 games. And he is the only player, guys, the only player to win the World Cup 3 times. 58, 62, and 70. And 70, which is, I talked to Tony about this earlier on today, that was regarded by myself as the best team of all time in football history. We can talk about Barcelona, we can talk about Man City, we can talk about Bayern Munich, we can talk about all these other teams, Real Madrid. But in my opinion, the best first 11 that I've ever seen play football was that Brazilian 1970 team. So, guys, he made 14 appearances in the World Cup, scoring 12 goals. He racked in 126 goals in one season in 1958, 1959 season. 126 goals, guys, in one season. 120 guys. When a player scores 40, 50 goals, and I'm talking about Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi here, everyone's like, wow, how did they do that? This guy scored more than double what those two scored in one season. As you guys know, he made his debut for Santos at 15. He's also got the Guinness Book of Records for the most wins for the Ballon d'Or trophies. 7 trophies. I know Messi's won 6. Ronaldo's won a bunch as well. This guy won 7. And not just that, but he won it at 17 years old. A lot of what Messi's done has come through his prime and the latter years. And I remember talking to one of the football agents, Colin Gordon, and him saying to me, do you remember when Arteta was at Barcelona? Do you remember when Fabregas was at Barcelona? And you know all these different players there, Iniesta, Messi, and all these guys. They were known as good players, right? They were not known as great players. And you think of like how long it took Messi and how long it took Ronaldo, because Ronaldo was at Man United. We all know what he was doing there. They were barely scoring double figures. They were barely hitting 8, 9, 10 goals. This guy was racking up goals when he was 17 years old, winning the Ballon d'Or. That's just absolutely bonkers. So, guys, he finished his career at the Cosmos, New York Cosmos, with Franz Beckenbauer. I remember that. Carlos Alberto. And I remember Bobby Moore playing for them as well. And Bobby Moore saying, in music, there is Beethoven and the rest of them. And in football, there is Pele and the rest of them. So, guys, what was your overall remembrance of Pele, David? What could you remember when you was growing up? And this is a generational thing. A lot of people won't even remember Pele, because remember, when he got that award in the year 2000, a lot of millennials, a lot of guys who are 21 years old, 20 years old, 19, 18, wouldn't even have known anything like that. What was your opinion on him? What did he bring to you as a footballer?
I think when you think of Pele as a name, a player, an icon, even when you're growing up watching football, like I remember I used to have this. You remember the old cassette videotapes, and it was basically just history of football, and it talks about and the first international game was England versus Scotland, and blah blah blah. But plastered through it was always Pele. And that name was very synonymous within that video. I mean, the video was was about an hour and a half, and his name was plastered throughout probably about 60 minutes of it. So it showed just kind of like the importance of even just growing up and trying to learn football. Whereas even when I was like 5, 6, 7, ever old it was, I was trying to learn as much as possible. That name just become synonymous, and how. At the youngest age, he done it at the highest level. I mean, there's a reason that we've started saying how Pele was how Messi, sorry, is now the greatest ever because he won the World Cup. It was almost like that was missing out of his trophy cabinet, or debatable that he's now one of the greatest ever, or that he's better than Ronaldo. Pele won 3 of them. The World Cup is the biggest competition in the world, and he's crossed over into that element where if you ask people to name footballers, even mainstream people will say, oh, Pele. So I think his impact on just mainstream culture, his impact on football. There was a video that went out recently about how Pele done it first. I don't know if you've seen it online about how people were doing such things as even the Cruyff term, for example, how he done it in a game before. Obviously, it was recognizable by Cruyff or kind of deemed by his name. Certain goals that Zidane would score, and it's just crazy how you look at a player like Pele and how through kind of almost like his death, like his name gets brought up, and then people now reminisce and look at what he's done over his career. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, this is just outrageous here. I mean, you almost have to go back and remind yourself just how good the guy was.
And this is what I'm saying. Those names we mentioned, Messi, Ronaldo, no, they weren't doing this at 16, 17, 18. They weren't doing this on the world scale.
And I think that's where kind of everyone's going to have an opinion. And even this, you see stuff like that where he dummies it so that the keeper comes out and he tricks the keeper. Little things like that where you think to yourself, how's this guy doing it in this generation, where the pitches aren't, the hollow turf that we have now, where players could literally go out and break a leg and probably get a yellow. It's remarkable, and he's always going to be up there in the GOAT debate. A lot of people will say he's the GOAT, and there's no kind of defense. You can't. There's no kind of characteristic or something or that you can put towards him not being there or not being the greatest of all time. So I mean, from a younger generation standpoint, and I'm 32. He's always going to be there. The names now are Pele, Maradona, Messi. I mean, if you want to put CR7 in there, you can. So I think he's been overtaken by Messi now because of what's recently happened. But you know, the first name that comes to everyone's lips was Pele. So I mean, it's only right that he gets celebrated in the way that he is right now, with people remembering him, with, you know, with the Brazilian population now looking and declaring, like you said, a 3-day mourning. Yeah, you know, the first GOAT of football, and maybe the GOAT of football. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a question I want to. You guys have got a lot to say at the moment. Yeah, Vince Carter. I forgot about Vince Carter and Archie Moore. Yeah. There's a lot of that in sports. It would be nice to build up a list of some of the greatest sportsmen of all time and how long they played. John says there will never be another player like Pele. It's as simple as that. I agree. SA Boxfit says Pele played on a rough pitches and wearing heavy boots and hacksaw challenges. Yeah, I'm going to come on to that later as well, because I think that, again, people who were born in this century have no idea how tough it was those days. Andrew says my personal favorite is 1982 Brazil World Cup team because the entire tournament. However, I accept that the 70s is vintage and excellent. Andrew, one thing that David brought up as well, he said the players that played with him, and before I go to Tony, I really want to talk about how important that was, because when you talk about who's the best player in the world now, people only ever bring up two names, and they've only ever brought up two names for the last sort of 5 or so years. I know we're talking about, you know, the words Salah has been mentioned, Eden Hazard has been mentioned, you know, a few names here and there have been mentioned, but this was an era with Revellino, with Bobby Charlton. You know, this was an era that had Karl-Heinz Rummenigge in it. It had Mario Kempes, you know, Zico, Michel Platini, Keegan, Dalglish, Gerd Muller, you know, Franz Beckenbauer, George Best, Johan Cruyff. I mean, there was just, and again, Maradona came in in the late 70s. There was just, the era had so many world-class footballers that probably in today's game, and I'm saying this now because Johan Cruyff was he's my third greatest player of all time. He was the Dennis Bergkamp of the 70s, and I loved watching Holland play just because of him. And he would be the best player in the world right now, like, regardless of what he does. And it's not all about goals, it's the way he plays football, and that's the thing. You look at Messi, great creator. You look at Ronaldo, great finisher. But I'm just talking about footballing genius. And there would be nobody on this planet who would be as good as Johan Cruyff. And Franz Beckenbauer, people talk about Van Dijk. He was the de facto centre-back in those days. Dino Zoff in goal, a goalkeeper. The golden age, those days, it was tough. It was like when Ali was champion. You look at the champions now and you're like, who have they got to fight? And then you look at when Ali was champion and he fought everybody. He fought the greats. So it's just like a different era where you're coming into it thinking to yourself, this guy not only had the best supporting cast of players, you know, in world history, that was the prime. That was prime football era. That was the golden age of football. But he played on some of the worst pitches with some of the worst sports equipment on you know, using some of the worst footballs that was ever played in history. Tony, and I'm going to come on to that after we speak to Tony. Tony, what's your thoughts as a whole, mate, on Pepe? What did he do for you as a sports person? And before you go, I'm just going to answer this question here. Cam says, was Pele the first global superstar athlete? Unbelievable legacy. No, I think that was Jesse Owens. Because Jack Johnson in boxing, that wasn't really, in terms of on the world scale, you know, Jack Johnson was, he was the first sort of black man who really brought boxing to the fore. But as a world sport, it was Jesse Owens was on the mainframe, and we had all that stuff going on with Hitler and Germany and everything going on. And he was the guy that everybody just went, wow. He was the Carl Lewis before there was Carl Lewis, the, you know, Usain Bolt, Linford Christie, all these guys. He was the de facto guy in the late 30s. And that's a long way. That's 20 years before Pele even came onto the force. So I think that the first superstar athlete, in my opinion anyway, everyone's got their opinion and I respect that, but I think Jesse Owens was. Tony, over to you.
Wow, I mean, there's so much to say. You know, I've spent a lot of time looking at video of the great Pele today. As you can tell, I've spent a fair bit of time putting together some montages for the show tonight, and it's just phenomenal. That's all I can say. The man was a phenom. You know, I mean, when you look, and you're going to see it over and over tonight because I've done some interviews and I've interlaced the footage of him playing. Look at his technique. Look how two-footed a player. I mean, when I entered the game, most players were one-footed. Repeat that. Most players were one-footed.
Yeah, I know I was.
You know, there just weren't players who took shots with their left foot. And please, I beg you, look at the footage that I've uploaded because you will see it. Look how this guy uses both feet, not just to dribble, but also shooting, controlling the ball, manipulating the ball. You know, his use of head, his use of chest, the fact that he could do back heels and flicks, with the ball behind him. You know, Cruyff turn was invented before Cruyff.
Yes.
He gets attributed that turn. But Pele was doing that in black and white.
Yeah.
On a regular.
At 17. At 17. Nowadays, we look at players at 19 and go, give them time. They're too young.
You know, it's a wonderful thing that he does, but Cruyff did not invent that move. And to be able to look at him, and the thing is, we ain't looking at anybody else and going, look at him with that move. Look at him with that move. I mean, you and I can talk about the great, 1970 team, because it was in our lifetime. We weren't old enough to really watch it live because we were both 2 or 3 at the time. But the truth be said, we could appreciate it at a much earlier point in our time than most of today's youngsters. Like, appreciate you being a youngster, Dave, in this room. But the thing is, we were brought up on Muhammad Ali in most black households and Pele. And to this day, those are the 2 greatest athletes in their respective sports.
I'm going to show you. Keep talking. I'm going to show you I just took a picture of my photo on my wall, which I wanted to show you guys. That's on my wall, and as you can see, I bought this from a shop which was signed. Pele signed this. I bought this in America 20 years ago. It's signed by Pele. Let me blow it up here so you guys can see that. And that's on my wall. Tony has a lot of photos of footballers, Bruce Lee. A lot of boxers, but this for me, like, I cherish this till the day that I die. Just absolutely, and this is why I say generational. Absolutely flawless.
Yeah,
that makes me feel so emotional when I look at that picture, man. Because it did so much for me as a young boy getting into sports. Like, that was it. That was why I got into sports.
Yeah, and what I watched the video today showing a collection of tackles on Pele. And I ain't joking you. Every single one is a red card. And every single one he gets up and carries on. Some of them he goes through them. You're like, how the hell? Not only would the guy have got red carded, but the game would have been stopped. But he didn't. He carried on and went on to do something. So it's absolutely amazing. I've got 3 interviews that I wish to play. Each of them gives credit to. There's a segment on the World Cup just gone, and then there's a segment on Pele and the people's feelings on him. So when you're ready, I'm ready to show those.
Yeah, I just want to. I'll get my bit in with Pele as well. As I said, when I was a young boy and first started getting into sports, it was Pele that really inspired me, and Muhammad Ali. Those two sportsmen in the early 70s was and I was starting to come of age, 4, 5, 6 years old, starting to go to primary school, starting to go into the school playground and meet new friends, kick a ball about, and start to get myself athletically tuned. Going home, switching on television, watching sports was a new dimension for me, because when I was younger, when I was 3 or 4, it didn't mean nothing to me. It was only when I started going to school and being active and then going back into the household that I looked at the TV screen and saw, wow, this is what's going on. This is what I need to adhere to. This is it. This is what I want to be. I want to be one of these guys. And Pele did that for me, as well as Muhammad Ali. And it was just like the inspiration for just me. I know plenty of Jamaicans, West Indians, Africans who got into football and sports because of Pele as well. Like the amount of people that wouldn't be there because of him. It's like you need a whole country to fill, because he inspired like a whole nation. And I want to cover two things that Tony and David has said. David mentioned the equipment. Now, guys, you have to remember today's football versus football back in the days. The ball and the boots, for example, were made of genuine leather. Genuine, guys. And leather, if you know anything about playing sports back in the days, leather balls were notoriously heavy, and they were double the weight that these balls that the footballers playing with these days. And if you played in wet conditions, it would absorb the rain on the pitch. And could you imagine trying to play attractive football when these balls were hard to manipulate and get under control, or run at length, like the whole pitch or half the pitch?
Yeah, just to chime in on that as well. Apologies. But why do you there's a big thing about the one World Cup that Pele didn't win is part of 4, and the one World Cup he didn't win, which was '66. We only have two of those players remaining now, in Sergio Hurst and Bobby Charlton. A lot of them, they've attributed a lot of the kind of the deaths or the end kind of like diseases to head trauma. A lot of players had dementia as well, and it just goes to show how, back to that point of equipment, it must have affected people. It must have affected quite a lot of the players there. And if we're talking about, a lot of people, and I think Jeff Hurst has actually said he's going to give his brain to science to see the effects of football. It just goes to show what kind of effect it had on players, even when they weren't playing. They might have been concussed through games, and just through knowing football, just on autopilot, kept playing maybe. So yeah, I mean, the equipment is a massive thing.
I mean, you talk about in today's game, guys. In today's game, your ball, fully synthetic footballs didn't come out until after me and Tony left school. So that would have been about 85, 86. And that's where the shots on goal started to move a little bit more in the air. I remember watching Alexis Sanchez play for Arsenal, and the way he used to hit the ball, and then it's just like somebody is controlling the ball with a remote control, and the ball's doing all of this in the midair, and you're just like, whoa, and they've done that to make the game more spectacular. But that wasn't what they had back in the day. Balls are tested now rigorously in wind tunnels, like Formula One cars. They have less drag in flight, and they produce more precise, truer shots. Pele didn't have that. The technological research now we see is continuing to develop footballs to improve the performance. Like even players are enhanced through electronic performance and tracking systems, and they wear all this monitoring stuff. And when they come off, they can monitor the players before. They didn't have any of that. And so could you imagine Pep Guardiola? I remember Pep Guardiola once saying about Pele when they talked about how good was Pele's team. And he said Barcelona's tiki-taka football would be impossible with a leather football. And just thinking players in today's game have to be so much more fitter because they cover 50% more ground. They have to run more at greater speed, more sprints. I mean, the high intensity pressing and sprinting is triple more than what they used to do in the 50s and the 60s. So in terms of endurance, being more athletic, being quicker, more agile, having a greater capacity for mental concentration, all of that stuff, they didn't have it back in the day. And coming on to Tony's point, where you think to yourself, Pele missed a few games because he got sliced, he got chopped to pieces against Germany, and he was out and he was injured. Well, the reason for that, guys, is because they, you know, there was no red or yellow cards in football until 1970. FIFA didn't introduce bookings until the 70s. So when he was playing, he was getting hacked and slashed all game. And they played through all of that. There was no scouting videos, guys, no tactical analysis. It was the opponents at most times had little to nothing, no idea of what they were getting into. It was like playing Russian roulette.
When was subs introduced? I mean, that must have been what?
That would have been late 60s, I believe. I think 60. I think that was 68, maybe the year I was born.
I mean, so even when you got hacked down, they should just basically go stand at the top of the pitch, even you know, just to be a body, you know, even if you was crocked. So, I mean, it's madness when you think about the rule changes and everything. Really,
it's insane, David. I mean, before I go to Tony so he can show you the videos, guys, I just want to say we've gone half a century and still no one has come close to these achievements. And don't talk to me about Messi and Ronaldo because you're embarrassing me. Yeah, because, you know, Ronaldo never won a World Cup. Messi barely got over the hill with this World Cup. This guy won 3, and he did it. He weren't even in his prime when he did it. Yeah, he went. That's how developed. Guys. I know I told you he scored 126 goals in one season, but when he was 17 and he got into the Brazilian team into the 1958 World Cup, in his first season, guys, his first season at 17 years old, he scored 41 goals in 38 games. In his first season at 17 years old. Tony, over to you, man.
Hold on, just for just a quick update. That Fires geezer from Leicester's just scored 2 own goals.
Oh, you're joking! So it's 1-1.
The David Luiz lookalike. He's for Leicester. He's bagged two OGs. So I hope none of you got him in your dream teams. He's just scored.
Oh my God! I just saw the second goal. That is atrocious. That's
crazy.
So as I said, guys, I just want to sum up before I go over to Antonio. Welcome, Bertram. You've missed quite a bit, especially in terms of what we're talking about. Why Pele was such an inspiration to us growing up, as well as Muhammad Ali in that era. We've talked a lot. We talked a lot about how the game was different then, how the balls were leather and they picked up a lot of wetness and became like kicking bricks on the pitch. The training, the endurance, the tactical, all of that stuff that wasn't there. There was no red cards, there was no yellow cards until 1970. To a point, there was not even any substitutions in 58. And again, I talked about him scoring 126 goals in one season. And as I just said before you came, Bertram, at 17, his first full professional season, when he got picked to play in the Brazilian team, he scored 41 goals in 38 games in his first professional season at 17 years old. So when you guys are talking about Bertram giving Saka a hard time at 21, Pele was scoring 40 goals when he was 17. So let's put that into perspective there.
I'm going to get some beating on Saka, so I'm ready for my beating.
All right.
He's getting better every day, so I'm ready for my beating.
Let me drop in this first video so we can start getting this out of the way, because there's some really good, salient points that everyone is raising that I think some other people have raised. So let me drop this in, guys. This first interview is with Alex from Cannon Fodder TV. Have a listen. Okay, so I'm joined by Alex from Cannon Fodder TV. How you doing, Alex?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. But thank you for the invite. First time appearance on 101.
And overdue. So welcome. Thank you. What you thought of the World Cup?
I thought it was a really good spectacle. I saw someone tweet out last week. You see what happens when you don't have alcohol at these spectacles. You know, the World Cup, there was almost no trouble at all. And I thought, England, learn a lesson there. But the World Cup as a spectacle, I thought it was probably one of the best finals in general. I don't know. How can I say this? Morocco breaking history. But I thought as a spectacle, I thought they hit the right point. They hit all the right notes. And for Lionel Messi, not for Argentina, but for Lionel Messi, I'm very happy for him.
Give me your stories and memories and your tribute to the man who sits behind you in the screen, the Brazilian legend, Mr. Nascimento.
Yeah.
Pele.
Yeah. Did a show yesterday, did one this morning. And for the family, I understand, you know, losing a loved one. But for the likes of myself, who actually met Pele in 1981, I'll get to that in a moment. What a legacy that he left behind for us. What a legacy, you know. And it's like when we leave this earth or this life of ours, you want to make sure that you leave a legacy, a positive legacy where you can affect people when you are long since gone. And I got to say, Pele, and again, from the show I did this morning, Pele in Spanish means I fought or I fight. And you know what? For me, in my opinion, the greatest player to have played the sport of football, the greatest ever. Won 3 World Cups, you know, 1958, age 17, scoring 2 goals. Went through a little bit of turmoil, you know, was called back and said to his father, actually, when he was a youngster, because his father was in tears. He said to his dad, you know what, Dad, don't worry. I'm going to win the World Cup for Brazil. 3 World Cups. A legend for me. A legend. Now to the story about how I met him. 1981. Those of you who know North London, Islington, Highbury, I went to Highbury Grove School. I was playing cricket as well. Playing cricket with my brother in the field just opposite Highbury Grove School. And one of my brother's friends said, Pele. And my brother said, what do you mean Pele? Pele is in the car, it's coming down. So we dropped our cricket equipment, Tony. No word of a lie. 1981, the summer of 1981. We ran up Highbury Grove Road to be, you know, we saw a whole lot of children around a black limousine. So we kind of fought our way to, and literally he had the window rolled down and he was writing autographs. Now I need to find the autograph, Pele, 1981. A legend. And it will live long in my memory. You know, I've told the story to my children how many times. They're probably sick and tired of the story. But I got to meet the man himself, Pele, 1981, coming back from Highbury Stadium. Yeah, I mean, I can only, you know, I've got a few more minutes, but, you know, yeah. Pele, sad, but also, a legacy that he's left behind. The greatest footballer ever to have played the sport. Now, some people might say, well, what about Maradona? What about the original Ronaldo? They don't come anywhere close, Tony. They don't come anywhere close to play. Nowhere close. Yeah.
Amazing. Right. So, listen, I am so grateful for you giving your time this evening. I know you're having a busy time with family there. Hope you have a wonderful new year. And I look forward to joining you in the new year on many a podcast. So,
Tony, I just want to say, you know, again, thank you for having me on the first time on 101. I hope to come back again. And likewise, we hope to have you back on Cannon Fodder TV. But those of you who are watching now, make sure that you subscribe to 101. Is it 101 on Arsenal or Arsenal on 101? Is it?
Either will get you there.
Excellent.
Good stuff from Alex. So Bertram, before I go into the next one, I mean, we had a fantastic conversation. For those of you who haven't had an opportunity, who are Arsenal fans and want to see a great conversation about Arsenal, I was joined by Bertram, Manning's man, and Vincey. The conversation is still on the Arsenal 101 channel, and yeah, it was a great conversation. But since that conversation, we have lost the greatest of all time. And Bertram, what are your thoughts at this time?
Well, I think as time progresses and you become out of sight, out of mind, that's what happened to legends, historical figures, right? Because we have to go on with our lives. So what normally happens is in today's environment, you hear Messi's the greatest, Ronaldo's the greatest. People are divided between those two. You hear people from the 80s to the 90s say Maradona is the greatest. But if you think back from the early 60s through when Maradona came on the scene over a 20-year period, there was no debate about who the greatest was. It wasn't even a consideration. I mean, people may mention Cruyff a little bit when he came on the 70s and the Dutch team playing total football. Everybody wanted to be Pele. The number 10 became famous. Which other number here everyone wants to wear? Everyone wants to wear I used to wear the 10, frankly. I'm not sure how I got it. But I used to fight for that 10, maybe bullet my way to get the 10. Because we all want to wear the 10. If anyone who wear the 10 on the team symbolizes that that player was a footballer of some renown and some acclaim. And so he made that number famous. And when I was growing up in the 70s, frankly, he was the known commodity, the person that people looked up to. There was no debate about who was the greatest player of all time. And time have progressed, just like we hear the whole LeBron, Michael Jordan debate. In my time, there was no debate about Michael when he came on the scene through when he retired. And now people are saying LeBron is the greatest. But what you have to look to is separate the eras. It's very hard to compare eras because in Pele's days, frankly, it's a different game than you have today. I mean, Pele's day was a butcher type, archaic type way of playing football because opponents were trying to take you out. And that's why after I think it was the 62 World Cup, he threatened to retire, or 66, once he got butchered continuously. Because Apollo said previously referees were much more lenient about how they treated players and about how they didn't value the commodity, which are the players, as much. And you can get away with what I call murder when you play because you can tackle around the waist and get away with it and don't get a red card. And so it was a much more physical game then. And that's why I appreciate Maradona more and I appreciate Pele more because of the physicality of the game then and the savagery that the game allowed to happen, frankly, treating players. Now, a lot of sports, we have become much more humane, I would call it. So whether it's basketball or American football or soccer football as we know it, we're much more protective of the product that we have and treat them as more precious metals than we did previously. So I'm not sure Pele's goods are as appreciated by the younger generation today. But if you look at the highlights, and people say, well, I've never seen him play. Well, go watch that. Just because you watch YouTube today, go watch highlights of his game or what games he's played in. Watch the world at their feet when Brazil won in 1970, and you can see some of the highlights of how Brazil played, and he was the key player for Brazil then. So I do believe he should be given the renown, the praise, the acclaim, the notoriety that he's being given, and how we're lauding him today because he definitely deserved it. His play was, I mean, everywhere he went. I remember there was a instance where he went to the White House and Ronald Reagan met him and said, Pele, you don't have to introduce yourself, but I'm Ronald Reagan, the president of the United States, with the view that everybody knew Pele. But everybody may not know the president, but everyone knew of Pele because he and Muhammad Ali was probably the most renowned athletes ever, frankly. And still maybe. Today's environment, we have the Ronaldo and the Messi, and we have social media. But even then, when information wasn't as disseminated and as easily gotten as you do today, you don't have access to information like you did then as you do now. Everyone knew about Pele. I mean, the story about the conflict in Nigeria when they delayed or put a halt to some fighting, people having a civil war, so Pele could play a game in their country, give you an idea of how renowned and how known the player was. So, look, we can't laud him enough. He missed. And also, I think what also was interesting about Pele was how humble he was and how loved he was. So Maradona had his problem with drugs and all that, and it could be a challenge. But everyone that speaks about Pele talks about the man and talks about his accomplishment on the field. And they were separate and they were actually integrated. So he's an acclaimed person who has done a lot, both in terms of for Brazil, for himself and his family. But we all should give him the praise that he deserved, give him the acclaim that he deserved, because he was a football pioneer. He changed the game. A lot of skills that we see today are skills that he exhibited when he played, which was then skills that he introduced. And now they're things which we value. So, yeah, a lot to be said about Pele, but you can't say enough. Tony, you left us?
I just want to say, no, he's still there. I just wanted to say thank you for Box Fit, Taj, for £5 into the kitty. So I really do appreciate that, mate. Everything does support this channel from you guys. We're here because of you, and I really do appreciate that. Enough respect to that. I just want to say something to back up what Bertram said. One of the things that I was going to come on to later was, that footballers have had their issues after they've retired in the game. We all know what's happened to some of the health of a few players who have needed help, who have needed mental help, and players who have done their best to help the sport. This guy, Pele, went on to be an advocate, not just for his country. Not just for his country, but for many people around the world. In terms of one of the first spokesmen about erectile dysfunction, it was him. This was a subject that nobody wanted to talk about. Everybody sort of looked at it and said to themselves that we can't deal with this, we can't talk about this, we can't express ourselves in the way that we want to. And Pele was the guy who came in and said, no, look, I'll be the spokesperson for it. I'll talk about it. I'll be the face to help save men who are having problems in their marriage and things like that. He was that type of person that he was willing to put his namesake on the line to help other men around the world just be better at being a man and being honest and being forward about whatever illnesses that you had. And that is so important. Tony's making me feel emotional now because that's akin to this signed picture that I've got of Pele. But yeah, just like that alone, you always heard Pele being an advocate for people who were ill, for FIFA. He was a big spokesman there. Didn't agree with a lot of things that happened with FIFA when we all know the corruption was going on. Pele just spoke his mind, and I just love him for that. And even when you see a lot of these other people who have left the game, they have not given the game back as much as Pele did, even after he retired. So he gave us all that when he was a player, and then he gave us even more when he retired. So that's just beautiful. Over to you, Tony.
So at this stage, I'm going to bring in the interview I did with Saj, also known as Box Fit. So once again, thank you very much, Saj, for that super chat donation. And here is our conversation from earlier today. So I'm joined by Saj Ali, a good friend of mine, a loyal Liverpool fan, and a great historian of the game. How are you doing, Saj?
Yeah, all good. Hello, everyone. Doing good.
It's been a while, so we're just catching up.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the World Cup? We just had what I consider to be a fantastic World Cup. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, very exciting. Had a lot of upsets. And of course, there were some teams that it would have been nice if they had gone a little bit further. So Saudi Arabia, for example, they beat Argentina, the eventual winners. And there was quite a few upsets. Morocco, great story, brilliant. Surprised they got through that far because they're not really one of the best teams in Africa necessarily. So to get through to the semis, fantastic opportunity. And they could have actually got to the final with few breaks here and there. And obviously, it's been voted as the best World Cup ever on the BBC. It was certainly a brilliant final. Very few that I can think of that were better. So, brilliant tournament all round, and ended on a great note for the little man, my wee fella, Lionel Messi.
What are your thoughts on Liverpool going forward, and what you've done so far in the transfer market?
Yeah, mixed sports. On the one hand, quite excited. He's only 20 odd or something like that. He's quite experienced, so he's already a Netherlands international, and they're doing quite well in international football as well. Qualified for the World Cup. They recently got through. I think they got to the final of the Nations Cup. So they're doing well, and it's a nice signing. I think he can develop there. The only problem I have a little bit is we're a little bit top heavy. A bit up heavy, we've got Nunes, we've got Darwin. I mean, we still got Salah and Firmino. I mean, obviously, it's still good to get him in because, the likes of Origi and Sadio have gone. But we also got
Jota
that boy,
and Luis Diaz.
Fabio. And that Fabio boy, the young boy that they had at Fulham last season on loan. So there's about half a dozen players up front. I mean, it's good to have about 4 or 5 players competing, but 5 or 6, I don't know. And also, their midfield's aging a little bit. Virgil is beginning to sort of wane a little bit. So perhaps strengthening in other areas, and especially with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So obviously that's universally regarded amongst Liverpool fans as a little bit of a weak spot.
Give us your thoughts and feelings about the great man.
Yeah, I mean, as I said on my Instagram post, one greatest passed a few years ago, and now the other greatest of our childhood has passed in Pele. And a lot of people were drawing the comparison with Muhammad Ali. And the thing about it, with your heroes, you tend to reassess them as you go on. I remember John Barnes saying Argentina would never have won the World Cup without Maradona, but Brazil would have won the World Cup without Pele. And I think Brazil of 1970 probably would have won the World Cup without Pele, but I don't think the Brazil of 58 would have necessarily won the World Cup without Pele, or 62. And, and Pele did things, just watching this footage, that you see modern players doing it, and he was doing it 40, 50 years ago. And we're talking about pigskin, thick, heavy footballs and clobber-like boots. And he was still moving with the grace and elegance of a gazelle. Now they have predator boots and, whatever is the new modern incumbent. But in those days, that's what you played. You played with heavy boots, dirty pitches, roughhouse tackles. You used to get kicked from pillar to post, like George Best, I suppose. And, he could still strut his funky stuff like anybody. And, you have to reassess it. Brilliant, great player, great miss. But, it shows as our heroes are slowly dying away. Obviously, we're aging as well, isn't it? So, that's a sign of the times, I guess.
Yeah.
And a sign of history, I guess.
It is indeed. But as with anything, we lose legends like Pele, but along come new breeds like Mbappe, Haaland, Lewandowski, and more. It's something that will just continue to happen infinitum. But we definitely lost a great one there. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tony. It was always a pleasure.
We'll catch you again sometime on one of our shows real soon. The game that the last bit of our talk this evening.
Excellent, nice one. So we've actually got a question here saying, dudes, who's your top 5 of all time? I think we've had this before, but probably with a different set of panelists. So it's a strange one.
You need top
David.
10 versus top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I can do top 10. I just need. All right, hold on a second.
Top 5 is tough. Top 4 you probably can get away with. The 5th one is the challenge.
It's difficult though. Like top 5. I think this is where you're gonna have a difference in kind of like that generation
of all time, really, regardless of generation. Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. Who's that guy? Real Madrid's best player of all time.
Di Stefano.
Yeah, Di Stefano. Zidane. Messi. Cristiano Ronaldo.
Are you doing 5 or 10? Are you doing 5 or 10?
Ronnie.
10. That's 10.
You do 10. Okay. 10.
Ronnie.
Cristiano Ronaldo, and then
Ronnie.
I think 10.
I missed
10.
that one. That was 9. So I'm throwing Franz Beckenbauer in there.
Yeah,
I'm throwing Franz Beckenbauer in there. So that's my 10. David, 10 of all time. It's hard. It's a hard one to do on the spot, isn't it? It's a hard one
5
to do on
I
the
can
spot.
do. I think 5 I can do on the spot. As much as this, obviously, it is about Pele. I am putting Messi as my greatest. The reason being is, one, I think in today's game, where it's a lot more in terms of, you think of the athleticism around players now. You think about how much kind of training, coaching, etc. that goes into it. Everyone's at their optimum at this level, and for Messi to be able to do it for club and now for country, I think for me that kind of his kind of club career, and now obviously what he's won with the Copa America and World Cup, for me that puts him at the top. But I don't disagree with anybody who would say between him, Pele, or Maradona. I think them 3 are kind of, if you want to call it 1, 2, 3.
Can I give you an intangible?
Go for it. Yep.
I'll give you an intangible. I've got a magic number, which is 104. 104. 104 is the number of penalties that Pele had in his career for the teams that he played with.
Mm.
And did you know that he never took any of them?
Yeah, it's a bit of a stat. I think this is the thing. I think this
Do you
is
know,
the thing, though. When
he did an interview a couple of years ago, and he said penalties are for cowards because he believed scoring from the spot was too easy. So he never took penalties. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that about him.
I think the thing that you look, and this is why I always kind of maintained the thought process of, even when you had the Cristiano versus Messi debate, you could always say Messi could easily drop into the 10. He could easily, play as a central midfielder, even when he got older. As an all-round player, like for me, he's there for me as my greatest. But that's because also I've witnessed him and what he's been able to do. So there is always going to be slight biases there. I think you go Pele 2, Maradona 3. I'm going to go R9-4, and then I'm going to go. Actually, no, I'm going to go Zizou 4, R9-5.
Excellent. Oh, look at Cam says, take away Harry Kane's penalties. Hey, no, yeah, you can't do that, bro, because you'll ruin the man if you did that. You'll hurt Andy. Andy would be so hurt if you took his penalties away. Tony, who's your top 5 or top 10 all time? I see Bertram on his iPad doing his homework there, trying to get his 10.
No, I'm writing up my list. I'm not on the iPad. I'm writing this. I'm writing down my list. I'm not on the iPad. I go from memory.
I went from memory, did 9, and actually I had to add Franz Beckenbauer as my number 10. So he was the Van Dijk in those days, man. Best centre back for 2 decades he was, in my opinion. Tony, who's your list, Tony? 5 or 10?
Okay, so if I stick with a 5, yeah, Pele number 1, number 2 Maradona. Those are my top 2.
Yeah, that's how.
Then number 3 for me is Zizou. Number 4 is Rocket Ronnie, who you haven't mentioned. To my disdain.
Yeah, I know. I heard you humming and buzzing about that. Yeah. I couldn't even fit Ibizio in there for Portugal. I was struggling with that list, bro.
Eusebio has to be considered. Eusebio has to be considered.
I know, and I if I had time to sit down and make it up, he probably would have made it. But I had to flash forward on. I was put on the spot.
I have my 12.
So number 5. Number 5 is Messi. Number 6 is CR9.
Okay.
Number 7. Wow, number 7. That's difficult.
Yeah, that's where I put the Real Madrid guy. Di Stefano. Yeah.
Okay, he don't make it in mine. He don't make it in mine.
Wow, bro.
He don't make, because I want to keep mine a little bit more relevant for our audience. So I'm going to go number 7. I'm going to go with George Weah.
George Weah.
What? Absolutely love. Boys, you don't understand. Growing up, George Weah was everything to me. When Channel 4 started showing football, you remember this Dean Apollo? Because I used to know you as Dean, yeah? In them days. James Richardson on Channel 4.
Yeah.
George Weah every week. Every week.
Just don't talk about the George Weah that Chelsea got.
Okay. Number 8.
Oh my! It's I'm hoping Bertram's going to save me here because I left Franco Puskas from Hungary. I left him off my list. He had a better scoring record than Messi. He was, again, I think 106 goals he had in something like 790 games for club and country. He was crazy,
I'm gonna throw one in here that none of you would even think about considering, but I think he has to get props. His club career was ridiculous.
You've already said Weah, Tony.
Who's that?
You've already said George Weah, Tony.
No. I'm talking about
Bobby Charlton.
No,
George Best.
I'm keeping it up to date. I have to go George Best. Yeah, you did me. I have to go George Best.
No one said Gerd Müller. No one said Gerd Müller. We haven't heard that one.
Yeah, he missed out. If I had 12 like Bertram, I would have had Ibizio.
Muller still doesn't make my 12.
And George Best.
Muller still doesn't make my 12.
Okay, so George Best jumps in at number 8. But number 9, I'm going to go with Dino Zoff.
Dino Zoff?
Whoa! Okay. Nobody don't like talking about no goalkeepers. Yeah.
Damn right, Skippy.
Probably the best of all time. Best goalkeeper of all time, in my opinion.
People will say, Lev Yashin, but I don't know the guy. He's not of my era. I don't know the guy. And that's why Eusebio don't make it in my list. But I'm going number 9, Dino Zoff. And number 10, to round out my list, just because I saw so much of him. I have to go Thierry Henry.
Thierry?
He's being a little naughty. Hey, the African Guna and all them millennials out there would love you, bro. Generation X in the house.
Yes, sir.
No, I'm going baby boomers and Generation Y, and my man's throwing in the millennial tip. Nice one. Bertram is on Mastermind right now, man. Like, he's on countdown. Bro is.
All right, so
yo,
so I don't think it's that difficult for the first 6, frankly, but it gets challenging after that. So number 1 is Pele, because I've seen them all, and I agree. Generationally, we are biased. Let me just say that up front. We are biased generationally, and you have to be, right? Who you grew up with were your idols, so you're almost innately biased. So it's Pele first, Maradona second, and I've always believed that when you have these obstacles you have to overcome, like Maradona winning with Napoli, you haven't come close to winning ever since. With 86, when I came, remember most of the Argentina players in 86, you have to give him his due. And not for drugs and all these challenges, he'd be much more revered, frankly. Messi third, because if you look at him as a 9-year-old keeping up with Ronaldinho here at Barca, he's been good from he's been an infant, and he's carried that through. And given his small stature, he's been exceptional. Ronaldo, the real Ronaldo, number 4. In fact, no, I'm going to change that, actually. I'm going to go with my favorite player, number 4. Ronaldinho, number 4. I'm sorry. If he wasn't a party person, I'm sorry. Go watch him get cheered at the Bernabeu, standing ovation when they give Real Madrid 4 with Zinedine Zidane playing, Beckham playing, all those stars playing, and he destroyed them continuously. If you watch his history of him, PSG, Milan, Barca, go watch Ronaldinho. As good as Messi, frankly, but partying ruined him. Like it does a lot of Brazilian players. At 30, they are done. But Ronaldinho is ridiculous. The Brazilian Ronaldo is the next one. He's number 5. Without knee problems, ridiculous. Zidane goes next. Zidane is number 7. Cruyff is number 8. I think when the Dutch play total football, Cruyff is out there, ridiculous. George Best 9. And then number 10, I have about 4 or 5 players fighting for the
Yeah, I struggled there, man.
So I had Beckenbauer, I had Puskas, I have Eusebio, I have Maldini,
Maldini.
Stefano. Maldini was ridiculous from a 16-year-old, played until he was almost 40. You go look at his history, ridiculous. And played well up until that age. So that's my list. We have had some great players, frankly, over the last 50, 40 years. And I do think it's hard generationally to pick out your best players because the game has changed, right? The game is now a little bit quicker. The game requires much more skill. But the game is also soft, very soft. When I was growing up, if you come across beat a man twice, expect to be in the stands, ball, man, the grass, the seats, everything get cleaned up. I've gotten cleaned up quite a few times. I know how that feels. Can't walk for 6 months. So to tell me about this time when you can't tackle a person, and the English Premier League, you hold a man back, he got fouled. There's no such thing. It's a different game. And if Pele was so dominant in his time, so skillful in his time, still beating players, it tells you a lot about how good he was. So it's a great list, frankly. But my favorite player, I must admit, because Pele came along. I didn't see Pele in his early days. To me, when I watch Ronaldinho play, I enjoy the entertainment. I'm going to see somebody do things with the ball that is ridiculous. You go watch those guys you see on those YouTube doing things with the ball like in a circus. That's Ronaldinho playing football on the field. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And if you don't if you want to watch YouTube highlights, and highlights will tell you the whole person, but watch highlights of Ronaldinho scoring certain goals, which are ridiculous. But partying killed him, and they tell you about it. Partying killed him.
Yeah, his prime though, his prime was mad. Like, and I think for me, it's longevity of Ronaldinho. Like longevity is there, but at his prime, at his peak, he's better than he's up there with who we're talking about as the greatest. It's just a longevity issue for me.
No, I think partying kill. You're going to drink something. You can't party 29/7 drinking rum, whatever you're drinking, whiskey, whatever you're drinking. Okay, doesn't work. But you're right. His longevity wasn't what it should be, and even it affected his normal when he played normally, right? Because he was partying during those times. Just caught up with him eventually. But he was a brilliant player.
Yeah, yeah. So guys, so that's our top 10. That's our top 10 of all time. Thank you guys for the questions. Boxfit saying Bobby Moore or De Kaiser. Bobby Moore for me.
Beckenbauer for me.
Beckenbauer was ridiculous. We haven't given. You know what? We're very preferential to forwards in football.
But Beckenbauer made my top 10.
I know, but I'm just saying. Think about the players we picked: Pele, Maradona, Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. All those players. The first 7 or 8. Zinedine Zidane was a midfielder, but an offensive midfielder. Most of the players we pick are going to be offensive people who score goals, just like any other sport, whether it's basketball or you go football, American football, the same thing. The offensive players get most of the accolades. I would never pick a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Because I could stand beside between the stick and stave a ball, so I'm not going to think of a goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's true. It's like,
but you know what's, do you know what's interesting? They even said that Pele would have been a world-class goalkeeper in his time.
Well, he was very athletic, right? That's the thing you notice about him. Flexible, athletic, quick, skillful. If you think about a player today that may have some of his attributes, even though he was more skillful and more composed, it'd be like Mbappe, frankly, even though he didn't play on the wing like Mbappe. But that type of physique that he had and skill and quickness. I mean, flicking the ball over people, going between their legs was just normalized for him.
Yeah, I think you can only play what's in front of you, though, isn't it? So even like
was, I mean, you go back and watch the high up it gets up to head of that ball, and not just how high up, but the power he gets on that ball to head it down to force Gordon Banks to get down and get his hand on it. It's just the greatest save that I've ever seen, really.
Even the goal, what was it, against Italy in that 4-2 win, the goal that he scored with his head, and you're thinking about, I think it's a goal that I'm thinking about, how he gets up and he nods it in over a centre half.
Power.
You're thinking, the power of it is crazy. So
and the cross, the delivery of the cross didn't have all that much zip on it. It's just the power. Yeah. It's the power he gets in it.
Oh yeah,
it's
like
just phenomenal.
Even today's, I mean, you're looking at him getting hacked down, but that's one of the ways that you would like. Even I probably come up towards the end of that kind of let them know you're there kind of rule, if that makes sense. If you had a player that you knew was good, that you knew was going to run the show, it was literally take them out, see, because they're going to be able to affect the game, and they weren't viewed as being dirty. It was almost viewed as sportsmanship at the time. Just how badly do you want to win? If you want to win, bloody make sure that he does it, that you can stop him. But yeah, this is just obviously the amount.
It's butchery. I mean, hey Bertram, I can see at least 10 red cards there.
Yeah, that's the thing I was thinking about. Like Greenish and Zaha gets fouled a lot. It's not these type of fouls that Zaha are getting. These are like takeout fouls.
Wow.
Like the ball passed, the man doesn't pass. Those type of fouls. So, he experienced it, but he got up and played. I think Messi has that same temperament, actually. You get fouled, you get up and played, except those fouls are much more vicious than these that we have.
The old magic sponge was just about to come out on one of those clips. G says, the first global star of the world's game being a young, charismatic black man in the late 50s into the 60s, and how that helped the civil rights movement. He's American, this guy, by the way. So, I wonder how many people watch this man as such a brilliant ambassador for the sport we all love today. Show his joy, show his passion, his skill. Yeah, I think that's the reason why he got so close to a lot of them guys like Ali and all of that, because they were all advocating for the civil rights movement. It was pretty much all of them back in the day. So, and this leads on to so many different great and sporting moments that we know what happened in 1968 in the Olympics. Yeah, remember Tommy Smith? We all remember all of those famous things. That was all in the 60s. That was the era, and they all advocating, because if you had a platform, you had to use it in the right way. Right now, the only person that I would say that's really fighting tooth and nail is Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is just like, he has his charity, We Race as One, and that's like you know, all the Black Lives Matter, LBGT rights, all of that, like just thrown in. This guy's just driving against everybody. Because, you know, the sport, we all know, is the Piranha Club. They call Formula One the Piranha Club because we know how it works.
And Formula One, I've just literally closed that all down because now you can't do any protest without it being cleared by F1 first.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because they are that, you know, this is a rich white man sport. And we know how that all works. When he wore his jewelry and things like that, they brought all like 4 or 5 rules out this year just against Lewis Hamilton to stop him from doing the things, wearing the clothes that he wears, wearing the jewelry that he wears, and all those different things. It was almost like, why don't you just say Lewis is banned rather than say this is a new rule in our sport? Because he was the only one that was doing it.
Well, there's a reason why people like Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi had a seat or do have seats. Like it's mad. But didn't they go back on the whole jewelry thing? Because even Lewis was just like, yeah, I'm still going to wear it. Like whatever you say.
Yeah, I think when he turned up on the Friday, he didn't have it in him because it was worth like 10 points ban or something like that. But I can't. I mean, maybe they've gone back on it or not. I can't remember. I don't remember to that effect if they have. It'd be interesting to see that actually.
Well,
that's it. Any more videos, Tony, or is that the last one?
Did I do Neil?
I don't remember seeing Neil.
Guys, did I do Neil?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay, so the last one is Neil. Let's get that going. Neil, here we go. Joined by Neil, our resident Liverpool fan. And how you doing, Neil?
I'm doing good, you know. Hope your Christmas has been well. Hope you've had all the presents that you dreamt of and wanted and wished for.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we had a good time. And of course, we are top of the league. So we are top of the league.
Here we go.
I couldn't help but put that one in there.
I was going to say you had to get that one in, right?
Briefly, tell us, what were your thoughts about the World Cup?
Okay, so I've had this conversation with quite a few friends of late. And in my view, I thought it was a great World Cup. I mean, teams like Morocco and teams like that, they surprised me with the results and the way they played. Normally you get a few favorites and they're the ones that dominate the whole of the World Cup. And normally one of them will win it. But I said the underdogs did well this season. They all did well in the World Cup. So I enjoyed it. And for me, I'm going to say this, France, by the time they got to the end of full time, as far as I'm concerned, that was an African nation. Yeah, only their goalie was non-African. Yeah, all the others are of African descent. So Africa did get a team to the World Cup under the guise of France.
The last bit of our talk this evening is just literally to pay tribute to arguably the greatest footballer who's ever played, the late great Pele.
Right, where do I start? I mean, he's been an inspiration to most of the top footballers every decade, every generation. Everyone's looked up to him, and they've kind of said, when they're talking about themselves and where they've come from, everyone has watched footage on football on Pele. Everybody's done that. You've got to respect how he did it as well. Back in the day, we didn't have this sports science technology on diet, football boots, all that sort of stuff. He never had any of that, and he showed that he can be he was just as good then. And if he was around today and he was a 17-year-old with the technology nowadays, there'd be no arguments on who the greatest would be. No arguments at all. For me, thanks, Pele, the greatest footballer ever, and I don't think that we'll ever see anyone as great as him in a long time to come. He was the original legend, will always be the original legend, will always be the best in my books. Pele, I salute you. Rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Just say, gents, have a good one, have a good evening, and I'll speak to you on the next session. See you later.
Good stuff. So, think that's pretty much it. Unless anyone's got anything else they want to say.
I want to say on the World Cup, it's interesting that the last 2 World Cup, we have had no spectator problems. I wonder why. And they're both not democratic countries. I wonder why. Really interesting. And we had in the Euro, we had all these problems in the Euro, especially in England, which is the bastion of democracy. And go to 2 countries which are not, and the World Cup went smoothly. So
that's because you realise
ironic.
If you start playing up, you'll get locked away. They don't give a shit there. Listen, in England, it'll be slap on the wrist. All right, go on out. You go. You go to those countries.
But I find it ironic that when you have some latitude, you don't know how to behave, and when you don't, you behave really well. So I feel like penalties or prospective penalties does work.
Mate, it's all about, you know, the kind of almost like the what's the worst that can happen, and do something in England where you become a drunken yob maybe, or you just you right, you know, or you start some fights in this country, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You do it over in those countries, you do it over there, mate. It's literally, you know, you will get locked up. They're not going to play about. So I ain't risk. Like, if I was going out to any of those, if I was someone there, I ain't risking anything. You know, go to the game. You know, I'll sit there with a nice soft drink and just be a well-behaved boy.
Excellent. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined the podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as you leave. Apollo, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we've all talked about the man that we love and the man that has inspired us, and everything he stood for. Just a natural grace, just a natural beauty. Hard not to love. He was a, you know, you think of when LeBron James came onto the scene and when Jordan first came onto the scene and how different he was. You can imagine in the era of the 50s when you didn't really see a lot of black footballers on the TV screen, let alone skilled at that level. I can't actually remember anybody having that kind of skill before Pele. Like, you know, Pele was the first person to do what he did. And have it become renownedly known worldwide on the big stage. Yeah, because, you know, I mentioned Jackson with the boxing and things like that. But it's just the sheer, as I said, natural grace and beauty of his game, 2-footed. He was just a brilliant finisher with both feet, exceptional in the air, you know, despite standing 5'8". So this guy was as tall as Lacazette and played like Olivier Giroud, you know. He was adept at dropping deep for his link play. You look at some of the goals he scored where he picks the ball up at the halfway line, and his link play, he worked hard off the ball as well as he did on the ball, as any of his teammates did. You know, it's that Brazilian way. He was a free kick specialist as well. I talked about the fact that he didn't take penalties, but he damn well took free kicks. And just the fact that, imagine he didn't have penalties to add to his ridiculous goal tally, unlike Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, Maradona, any of those guys. He didn't have that. You know, quite frankly, I always was miffed with the Thierry Henry thing at Arsenal, because Henry did take his fair share of penalties, but he too had a superstition that if I was the one that was fouled, I won't take the penalty kick. So, you know, Pele's wasn't a superstition. It was just, he thought it was a coward's way of scoring. But, you know, but Henry, it was a superstition, because you can imagine you have these great players who could have added more goals to their game. And due to the fact that they didn't take penalties, or lack of, they scored less goals than they would have. And I just find that incredible. I find that incredible. But yeah, I mean, for me, guys, like I said, it's a 3-day weekend national morning in Brazil, and for me worldwide as well, because all I'm going to be doing this weekend is watching old Pele videos. That's all I'm going to really be doing. How about you guys?
I'll go then. Yeah, I think pretty much. Yeah, I think this is the thing. The first name when you think about football, he's the first name that crops up. You know, you can't tell the history of football without Pele. So, you know, if you are a football enthusiast, if you do love the game, if you do look at football as your main sport, you do have to go back and just watch these and watch the videos, whether it is the layoff to Carlos Alberto, whether it is, you know, the dummy around the keeper, whether it is, you know, the goals that he would score, anything really, just to kind of honor the man. Like he's an all-time great in most people's opinions, the greatest ever. So you do have to have that moment of, okay, if I haven't watched him, or if I've heard about him, go and watch it. Just go and research it. Simple as. It's so, videos are so accessible. You have YouTube, you have all of these platforms that you can go and actually watch players now and go, wow, okay, I didn't realize he was that good. Yeah. I mean, one of the videos that you popped up earlier, Tony, where he put the ball over the defender's head and then volleyed it in, you think to yourself, that's
who did that before him?
There wasn't.
Who did that?
You know. There are things that you look at, you know, and you just think to yourself, like, I know.
I mean, look, I'm English. I was born in this country, and the only two names that comes to mind in that time was probably Dixie Dean, and I'm going way beyond probably you guys right now, and Stanley Matthews. That's it. And they weren't doing anything like that. They weren't even two-footed.
I think I know Stanley Matthews is. I know the old wizard of dribble, but yeah, Dixie Dean, you've gone out my range there. So yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
I just want to. I mean, in closing, I have a little bit of footage. Of another of this great man's talents, which we haven't so far mentioned, and I guess it's a bit of a it's the devil, you know, or whether you like it or you might not like it. But I've actually been to Brazil, and the love for salsa in Brazil and football is unbelievable. I went over in '86 for the world. It was just after the World Cup, and I saw I actually got the pleasure of seeing Romario playing on a beach. I saw Romario playing on a beach, and you recognize how soccer mad that country is. You know, I went to the Maracanã. I went to see the Christ Redeemer statue, and to me that was like a homage. And when you realize that, you know what, not only was this guy, this nation, this huge nation who got like second highest population in the world, you know, not only is they like him, like their God, but this guy could sing. So I kind of figured that, you know what, let's have a listen to this guy.
Em 3 corações eu nasci. Foram 3 corações o que a vida deu pra mim. O amor da minha mãe, o exemplo do meu pai e o carinho do meu povo que eu nunca esqueci. O futebol é pra mim. A paixão, a emoção e o sucesso que eu jamais imaginei. Eu fui Pelé sem saber, virei rei sem querer. Isso foi o que o destino preparou para mim. Mas tive muito que lutar, nunca deixei de me preparar. O dom que recebi, procurei sempre cuidar. Eu sou Pelé, graças a vocês. Eu sou Pelé, meu legado é pra vocês. Me ensinou.
So yeah, I mean, you know, what is there? What, you know, a guy is just super talented. You know, he's you know, he was in films. You know, I didn't even get to upload. I wanted to show my clip of the his skills in
what is
Escape
it?
to
The prison.
Victory.
Yeah,
Escape to Victory. I mean, you know. It's going to be on this weekend. You know it's going to be on this weekend.
They have to put it on. I will definitely be watching it.
You know, it's just one of them monumental films in your life. You're like, what the hell? Bobby Moore and Alan Ball and Pele and Sylvester Stallone. And you're like, bloody hell.
Yeah, I definitely would be watching it. I definitely would be watching it.
It's just one of them.
You know, the one...
Basta olhar pro horizonte, pra uma nova esperança despontar. Abre os olhos pro futuro, que outro sol agora irá brilhar.
Brasil, Brasil.
A chama está acesa e pronta pra incendiar a alma e o coração.
Aqui no Brasil.
As nações do mundo prontas pra celebrar amor e muita paz. Unidos somos mais. E é um novo tempo que a gente avista. É o povo brasileiro nessa conquista.
Yeah, that's awesome, Tony. That's absolutely awesome. You're on mute at the moment, Tony.
Okay, I don't know why it's not coming off mine.
Yeah, so I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay.
You know, the one thing that, in terms of being so humble, that remember this guy played 18 years for his club, and there wasn't a lot of money in Brazil at the time. So you have to think to yourself, this guy was the best player in the world. He set records, won the Ballon d'Or more than anyone else, and he didn't have the money from the game. He weren't paid Messi and Ronaldo type money, and it wasn't. And I think personally, just my opinion, I think the reason why he took the New York Cosmos deal was because remember they made him 4 offers. They offered him 4 contracts to leave his country because he never wanted to play outside of Brazil. He said, no, Santos is my home. And when he realized like he didn't make a lot of money from playing in Brazil and how poor of a country Brazil was at the time, when the New York Cosmos came in with their 4th offer, they offered him 7 million. Bertram, you listening to me? Because you know me and you love talk about money. They offered him 7. This was in 1976. They offered him 7 million, which at the time made him the highest paid footballer in the world. But my point is he only took that because when he played for 18 years at Santos, he got literally no money. He was the best player in the world for nearly 2 decades. And he didn't get any money. Like he never got Ronaldo or Messi money. He literally got no money. And it was only until in the twilight of his years, when he took that New York Cosmos gig, that's what started to really pay him. And you know, credit to him for that. But to remain loyal to your club for 18 years is extraordinary and not get paid for it. Yeah, we know everybody at Arsenal signed the thing. Thierry Henry signed the thing. Aubameyang signed the thing. All of them signed the thing. Ozil signed the thing. This guy never signed nothing. It's extraordinary, man. Ozil signed it.
I'm not sure signing the thing is a good thing, you know. Because you get treated like how Aubameyang and Ozil does.
Hey, listen, you know how Arsenal have spent the last 2 years getting rid of all that dead wood? That's where Man United are in now. It almost seems like they brought in Solskjaer to just get rid of the dead wood, because what I like how Man United are moving at the moment, but think of all the salaries that they've had to sort of, get rid of that was just piling up on them. Oh, word.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll just say this for Pele, which is he had a long life. He had a good life. He had great experiences. He's leaving a great legacy. And I'll say, long live the king.
Amen to that, man. Amen. Yeah, I think that's it, Tony.
Thank you, guys. I'm just trying to update myself on the scores, on the doors. I see Liverpool are still 2-1 up. Brentford have won 2-0.
2-1.
2-1 Brentford?
No,
2-0.
No,
is
2-0
it 2-1?
Brentford.
I just looked at the score. It says 2-1.
No, it's 2-0. Ivan Toney and De Silva.
Yeah, it's 2-0. Okay. West Ham, man. When I did the West Ham game preview last week, I looked at their squad.
2-0. Yeah, you're right.
They've got an incredible squad, West Ham, but they've got a lot of players out, a lot of injuries. Skamaka, the gift that keeps on giving. Every time they play this guy, he scores, but he's just not featuring in the games.
They haven't built their squad right. Their squad all look the same to me.
Yeah.
Similar physical build, similar skill set, no differentiating quality. Paqueta looks out of place. I just don't see them going anywhere.
I think you look at Bowen. He's the big one, isn't he? That's called off. I mean, he looked like a well-beat, and even Antonio looked like both of them could have carried West Ham for quite a while.
Yeah.
And as soon as them two have gone cold, they can't.
No, he should pay Scametta and Anthony and Bowen, frankly, but he's getting nothing from the left side.
Yeah, he's got the
left side.
He's got Emerson. He's got Emerson there on the left.
Emerson is a left wing back. He's not a left winger.
Think about
Leicester could have done better today. By the way, Leicester scored 2 own goals. Even though Liverpool missed a lot of chances, and Nunes missed chances for fun. But he's a dangerous player. Even though he's missed all his chances, I hate to see when he starts scoring because he's unbelievably quick. I mean, he's physical and he's quick. So if you start playing with some more composure, he's going to be a dangerous player if he can get to that.
So when you say miss a lot of chances, are you talking about Lukaku Belgium World Cup miss?
Oh, yes. This guy's wasteful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. That's bad.
Even today, he got chances where he kicks over the ball, he kicks wide. The second goal, when he missed a chance hitting the upright, and the ball ricocheted off the defender in the goal. But he pressures defense, right?
It's not even a bad finish, though. Yeah. Was it Bertram? Like his finish for the second goal, it wasn't bad. Like the composure was there, it just didn't go in, and
it's not going in the goal. That's his problem.
Yeah.
So the ideas are right. Even the lob he made over the keeper is right. It's just not with the right pace, the right level. Something is missing. I think you have to it's very difficult, as you guys know, if you play football in front of goal to create that composure you need to put the ball in the net. People may think it's easy, but you want to keep a one-on-one. You just think 100 thoughts going through your mind. You got to figure out which one you should leverage to make a decision. He's not putting the right thought.
Hey Bertrand, for 85 million, you better get that stuff sorted out, man.
I think he will. Look, I think when he played us, frankly, you remember when he played us? He's quick. Yeah, that's why they scored that goal. He's ridiculously quick. Quick, physical, but his goals, he has to do a better job putting the ball in the net.
Excellent,
Breaking news, Cristiano Ronaldo has signed with Al Nassr.
Oh, we knew that was coming. It was either Miami or go to the Arab nations. But quite frankly, I'm surprised he hasn't gone to Miami.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you know, his partner bought him a Rolls Royce for £250,000. That means money's not an issue, right? Money's not an issue because she's spending his money buying him a present, right? So money's not an issue. So why would you go someplace where you're going to be anonymous? And he loved notoriety. He loved to be in the news. He loved to be known as the man. At least in the US, he'll continue to be in a relevant news. Nobody will hear about him. Who goes to Saudi Arabia and hear about him? I go to China and hear about them. They go to Siberia for money.
Hey, yo, Samuel Eto'o fell off the map for a whole year. Like, you know, Samuel Eto'o fell off the map, fell off the edge of the earth.
It's a bunch of them that fell off the map. You never hear about them again.
And this guy, after 7 months, he was like, help, get me out of here. I'm like, dude, man, you're making $500,000 a week. How are you going to scream about? He didn't care about the money after 7 months. You can get a damn about the money.
BT Sports bring the MLS, right? BT Sports carry the MLS game. At least you'll be seen someplace other than in the Middle East where no one sees you, literally.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah, no one sees you. So
he should have gone to the States, man.
He'd
He'd be on every talk show. He'd be on every front page of every New York Times, Washington Post. He'd be
like Beckham, how Beckham was, right?
Yeah,
Beckham that's how Beckham was.
Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated. He'd be front page news.
I don't know why he made a decision. Well, we know it's money, but
But his brand would be bigger. I mean, you're talking about money, but his brand would be bigger in the US.
Mate, look at what Ibra done. Look at what Ibra done in America, and there's still moments that you look at what Ibra done at LA, and you think to yourself, all right, you know what, that got him a move back to Europe, didn't it? Back to AC Milan, like
for sure.
Maybe they couldn't pay him, and he wants to be known as the highest paid player ever. You know how Ronaldo is. He wants to be on top someplace. His ego has to be stroked. MLS can't play him 60 mil or whatever number he's getting. That's not possible. So I'm sure money is the driving
factor. MLS and went to PSG.
Who?
So Beckham went to pay.
But
Beckham went to PSG after Element.
Yeah, he did that. Well,
yeah. And Terry was in New York, just killing it, man. I used to actually watch New York Red Bulls. I used to watch Terry under his game in New York, man. And even at his age, 37, 38, he was still killing it.
Well, he did come back and play for Arsenal a couple of times.
Yeah, that's because Wenger saw him in training. He's like, this guy's 37. He's still running rings around the defense.
Shows you how bad we were. Things have changed. Things have changed for our team. I hope we can get this. You think we'll get Modric over the line? It's going to be a tough one.
I think it's imperative. I think it's imperative now.
You can't pay 85 mil though.
No, we can't.
85 mil.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be structured in a way. It will be like 60 plus 25.
I think that's where it's going to go, but it's still a lot of money for an unknown.
Still a lot of money, but you're going to have to go there. You're going to have to go there if you look. We are title challengers. If you want to make a go of it for this season, you're going to have to go in with the war chest this January.
By the way, Tony, I hear the Nice coach from the Bush League says, Pepe is a brilliant player. You remember he was criticizing Pepe when he first started?
Yeah.
He's going to play him through the middle. I want to see that. He's not been proposing that, right? He's going to play him through the middle. That they have some injuries. So we'll see how that works out.
Did you see, I added you two onto the Balogun thread because they're all going crazy on the Balogun scoring 10 goals in the Bush League.
Yeah, yeah. He has to prove in the Premier League.
I've got one thing to say to you, Bertram. Lacazette has 10 goals as well as Balogun as well. So that tells you all you need. That says it all, exactly.
You can take Lukaku from us if you want.
Say it again, Dave.
He said we could have Lukaku.
But I'll say this for Lukaku. He's getting beaten for the World Cup. But I'll say this. When Lukaku got in the game, Belgium got chances. When Lukaku wasn't playing, Belgium got no chances. So is it the player getting himself in position to score? What is it? Because you can blame a forward for not scoring. I'm fine with that. But they got no chances when he wasn't playing. They got zero chances.
No. There was one game where he just kept missing chances.
No, I agree, Tony. But he came on for that game, Tony. He didn't start.
That game was ridiculous. I was like, how many chances do you want? Man was literally hitting the ball from 3 yards out.
He's
the man
dead
hasn't
too.
played
And-
since August. What do you expect? The man hasn't played since
Hey,
August.
David, every time he missed a chance, he was like, on the live TV screen for the whole world, he was like,
Yeah.
I can't believe I missed that chance. And
This
next
guy-
one, 5 minutes later, I can't believe I missed that chance.
He's done, isn't he?
Oh,
He's
what a
done.
game.
He's not done. He's not done. He's not done.
He's done. He's done.
No, he's not done. I'm telling you.
He
He's
is.
not done.
He can go to Italy and score 20 goals and be like, "Look, everyone, I've still got it." But at
He's done.
the highest level possible,
He's done.
which is the Prem, you know, and playing, you know, serious football.
Yeah.
He's done.
No-
Is it
He's done.
Lukaku's done
no
or Chelsea's
Premiership team
done?
will
Which
touch
one?
him.
Is
No
Lukaku
Premiership
done or
team will touch
Chelsea
him.
done?
Mate, Lukaku's done for Chelsea. He's done for Arsenal. He's done for City. He's done for Tottenham. He's done for
Nobody would sign him.
Mate,
Hey,
no.
hey, Bertram, answer this question. Ivan Toney or Lukaku?
Well, the way Tony's been has to be Tony.
Right.
Except I probably wouldn't side Tony because he probably won't play for the rest of the season after the next couple of games.
I'd still have Tony even if he can't play.
Oh, guys, we're there. We need to go.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah, I'm
out
going to go and
of
pick
here.
up the missus, man.
Liverpool
Listen-
had just finished their game, so they'd won 2-1. And
No, they
yeah,
didn't win 2-1. Leicester lost 3-0. Leicester scored 3 goals, so Liverpool didn't score a goal.
Oh dear.
Leicester
Yeah,
beat themselves.
What a
Terrible.
terrible.
Alright.
And
So,
when's the
guys,
last time
have a
somebody
great
scored
weekend.
2 own goals? Crazy.
Frank Sinclair. When it's
Probably.
Frank Sinclair against us.
Oh, he loved
Oh
the
my
own
God.
goal.
Yeah, I
Frank
remember
Sinclair
that.
was a walking.
Frank loved an own
Yeah.
goal.
Oh, he loved the own
Yeah.
goal.
Frank was good at that.
All right,
I think.
guys, listen. Enjoy your weekend, man. Thanks for tonight. It was such a blessing. Very emotional podcast. Thanks for the clips and the music, Tony. Really, really heart-touching that was. Appreciate that, man.
No problem,
Remember, guys, the whole weekend, they're mourning for 3
Olha
days, so
aí,
just
esse trio
enjoy it,
é
man.
instante de ilusão, mas que o amor do povo